Alright, so I have gone through the pedigrees and we have understood how pedigrees work, basically. Well, I hope. Now we're going to do some practices. I have filmed and practice video, but I assume, more practices would always be beneficial. So when we do tests, we usually label each row as 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll label them in Roman numerals. So we will write I, and then 2 I's, and then 3 I's, and then an IV or something like that. And then for the individual number, we'll label this as 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then we basically start new on every row. And this, we actually use regular numbers. So any number is just fine, but the row number is going to be Roman numerals. So let's get straight started. So basically, whenever I look at a pedigree, whenever anyone looks at pedigree, you should first tell how many individuals is affected. Right here, we have 7 individuals out of, I think, 22 individuals or 23 in this full picture. So obviously that tells us that's a small percentage, since it's likely a recessive trait, because that's only 0.3%, something around there, 30%. And then we look at the male to female ratio, that is a 4:3, which suggests that it's likely not an X-linked, because, X-linked usually have around 70% male affected to around 30 or 20% females affected. So we can tell that this is likely autosomal recessive. Now let's look at individual 1. Usually, I would like to label all the individuals. Just on top of them, I will write their genotype, because it kind of helps me a lot sometimes, because it makes me realize that, I just have to do crosses. So let's see. Since these 2 individuals are having an affected kid, and we can tell it was a recessive trait, we know that this person was a heterozygote. So now, what is 1? They have, since this is a recessive trait, since this disease was a recessive trait, we don't show the trait. So obviously, we are a big A and small a. And then let's look at 2. 2 is obviously, it's all colored in, so that is clearly 2 small a's. I don't think we need any explanation for that. Like, it's already colored in. So 2 small a's. This is a big A, small a, and 3. We can see that they have a kid that is affected. That's not good. This means that this person is also a heterozygote. So that's a big A and small a. And for 5, which is this little square right here, since this is a recessive trait, and we know that they will 100% get a recessive trait because they have a dad that's 100% affected, that means that they got the big A from their mother. So that's a big A, small a. Pretty simple. Pretty easy to understand, and we've gone through it. And now let's see question 3. If individuals 2 and 3, basically these 2, they have another son, what are the chances that the son will be affected? So now we have to do a simple cross. So we'll cross, I don't have any lasers. Can I write? Oh, I can't write. Oh, that's so sad. Oh, okay. Well, I can't do anything. So basically, we'll have to cross this. This is a 2 small a, so he can only give an A. And then this guy, he has a big A and a small a. So basically now, there's a 50% chance that he's going to be affected. And there's going to be 50% chance that he's going to be a carrier. Now, notice that he said, well, the question is its son in this case. That was likely a trap, because if you wrote something like an X-linked recessive or X-linked dominant, the son might just get you, because really, if it's an autosomal trait, a son or daughter, it doesn't really matter. It's just, it's just a kid. So right here, we'll write 50%. Now let's go on to question B. What is the likely mode of inheritance of this pedigree? Since this pedigree is so small, it's usually quite difficult to tell what is going on. So we see that there's 4 out of, what is this? 8 individuals. So that is half of the individual affected. A recessive trait is usually less than that. So we will go with an autosomal dominant for this one. Now, since this is a dominant trait, it makes it a little bit easier, actually. So this person is definitely small a, since, they're not affected at all. If they're not affected at all, they have to be 2 small a's. But this guy, he could be a big A, small a, or he could be 2 big a's. Well, B's in this case. But since they have an unaffected kid, this means this guy is a heterozygote. Now, this kid, since he definitely received a recessive trait from his dad, that means he is a big B and small b. And the seventh, we can't tell yet, but unfortunately, they have kids, and we can tell from their kids. Since their dad is a big B, small b, and they have like unaffected kids, this means that 7 is also a big B, small b's. Otherwise, where would these kids come from? They'd have 2 small b's. And then number 8, it's a recessive, because this was a dominant trait and they're not affected. That means that he has 2 small b's, which is pretty simple. If individual 6 and 7 has another daughter, what are the chances that she will be affected? Remember that both of them are heterozygotes, so BB. And since it's a dominant trait, that means we'll yield a 3-to-1 ratio in the phenotype. And that means there's a 75% chance that whatever child they're going to have is going to be affected. Now, let's move on to question 2, and I'll call it a day after this, because question 3 and 4 is kind of repeated. I will link this worksheet at the end, and I'll also link an answer. This worksheet is from MIT OpenCourseWare. I found a lot of stuff there because, they're very interesting. Let's read the question. We're analyzing this pedigree, and it gave you a bunch of information about X. So, X to the blah blah blah, X to that, and that means this is likely an X-linked trait. So, and on top of this, I want to add something. There's also a Y-linked trait, but usually we don't talk about it because, it's not that common. But I just want everybody to understand that there is a Y-linked trait, and sometimes it just happened to be one on the test. And I'm sure your teacher would also introduce this if you take this course in school. So, let's see. There's only 3 individuals, 3 male affected out of so many people here. That's a likely recessive trait. And then by looking at this, we have 1, 2, 3 males, and 3 males affected, no females affected. We have our answer, X-linked recessive. Now let's look at the genotypes. Yep. On the left, we have a mother. Since this is a recessive trait and she's not affected, she is AB, big A, small a, or 2 big A's. But the father, he has 1 Y trait, and his X trait is like, he's affected. His X trait is the small a, and he has the disease. So for his daughter, he's going to 100%, 100%, and I mean 100%, he is going to pass the X. Because he's going to pass the affected X. Because, well, obviously, genotypes for females is XX, and genotypes for males, XY. So when he passes this affected trait to his daughter, his daughter is 100% going to be a carrier because he has that affected X already. But now we have to figure out what's the trait of her mother in this case. So we look at the other kids, and for males, his dad is going to pass a Y. Then his mother, it passed the regular X. And for her daughter, is also a carrier. Now, yes, she may be a heterozygote, but unfortunately, looking at 3 kids, and she always passed, a regular one. That's some very impressive chances. So likely in this case, we're going to assume that she is a homozygote. But however, remember, look at the question. List all possible genotypes. So we're going to list 2 in this case. There's going to be X to the big R, X to the big R, or X to the big R, X to the small r. Why? It's because even though she absolutely could be a heterozygote, and she somehow just hit the chances to pass the healthy trait to all 3 of her child. I mean, that's still a possibility. I could be a carrier, but for 100 childs that I have, they could all be healthy because I just happen to pass that trait. Sometimes chances are impressive. So for 1, it's going to be homozygote, fully homozygote, or a heterozygote. And for 3 in this case, we already know because she already got the gene from her dad that is affected. That means she has a small r, so X to the small r, but she is not affected. That means she has an X to the big R. That is pretty simple to tell. Now, let's look at the chances of this person. What are the chances that A gets affected? This is a female right here. Since dad will pass the X rate, that means she's going to be a carrier. However, mother on the other side, we don't know yet, but since they have an affected kid. Wait, what is. Since they have an affected kid, that means they are both heterozygotes, obviously. Because if they are homozygotes, they can't have an affected kid. So this daughter is on the term. Well, it's since he is healthy and she is heterozygote and she doesn't show it, she could be a heterozygote or she could be a homozygote depending on what her mother decides to do. So let's see. The chance that is going to have the disease is going to be a 50-50 because she will always get the healthy gene from her dad. Now, it's just depending on her mom. So the chance of her having the disease is 1/2. Let's jot that down. If you want to write that down, write that down. It's 1/2. And now let's multiply. Since his dad, well, her husband, is 100% affected. Well, it's a male. So it's X and Y. Now, the kids, this person, he will 100% receive the Y trait from, well, his dad. Because his dad is always going to pass him the Y trait, or else what makes him a male. So, now, because this kid is 100% dependent on his mother. If his mother decides that, okay, I'm happy. I want to pass, this healthy trait. I want to make my son healthy. Okay, he will be healthy. So now this is a 1.5 chance that he is going to be healthy. But since there was originally only a 50% chance that she will get the disease from her parents, well, his grandparents in this case, that means that we are doing 1/2 multiplied by 1/2, which will get us 1/4, otherwise known as 25%. So B actually has a 25% of getting affected. We always have to account for, the parents. If we are not sure about what 3 is, we can't just make assumptions. We have to go all the way back. If we don't know what 3 was, we have to do like, he has a 1 or a 1/4 chance he was affected, and then 1/2, and then blah blah blah. We have to do all the calculations. It's not only about this generation when we talk about this generation. It can't be just across because we don't know about this. If this person had it, it might just change the whole thing. But in this case, we have to take no chances and multiply everything out. Now for A, it's a little bit more complicated because her dad is affected. That means she will be a carrier 100%. But her mother has a 1/2, 1/2 chance. So basically 1/2 right here. And since she also depends on her mother, this is a 1/2 times 1/2. Basically, that gives us 1/4. Very simple. So both of these kids is actually 1/4, but sometimes it's different. If we switch and mom has the disease, dad doesn't, it's a bit different because it's an X linked. So most of the time, when you're doing these type of questions, I want you to keep in mind that you're doing an X linked question. You can't be like, oh, mom and dad has the same chance of getting it. No, absolutely not. If you have a son, it's also different from a daughter. Sometimes the son might be, well, most of the time a son is highly more likely to get the disease than the daughter. But in this case, it's different because the dad is affected. And that's all I'm gonna say because question 3 and 4 is pretty repeated. I will link this, and again, all credits to MIT OpenCourseWare, and this is Fundamentals of Biology.